All right. Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome from me and my colleague Katharina Saftig. My name is Lea Blasey, and we are going to guide you through this session. Our focus today is on policies and permits, specifically identifying barriers and opportunity in aquathermal energy projects. Katharina and I are from the University of Oldenburg, and this is part of our ongoing collaboration with Aquacom. Before we dive in, let's see if this works. Okay, before we dive in, let me briefly walk you through today's agenda. First, we'll share our role in Aquacom and explain how we contribute to the project. Second, we'll look at our data collection and evaluation process and what the findings tell us. Third, we'll introduce you to the Aquathermal Energy, short AQE tracker. I will be using the abbreviation AQE a lot for aquathermal energy, just so you know. Anyhow, the AQE tracker helps us assess national progress in AQE, and it is publicly available online. Katharina will introduce you to it later. Then we'll explore best practice examples with a special focus on Switzerland. Switzerland is not represented in Aquacom as a partner country, but we can learn a few things from the AQE practice. And finally, we'll talk about ways for you to be involved in the future if you like. Of course, we'll also have time for questions and discussion at the end. All right, so in case there are participants who did not attend previous seminars, I'll tell you what Aquacom is about very briefly. We are an Interact Northwest Europe project with partner institutions from the Netherlands, Belgium, Ireland, France, and Germany. Aquacom empowers energy communities in Northwest Europe to use aquathermal energy, so using heat pumps to extract heat from water bodies, to heat their communities sustainably and efficiently. The project is not only about technology, but also about governance and capacity building. So we are developing, hopefully, replicable governance and technical models for aquathermal energy and providing training to empower local communities to adopt these solutions. And if you'd like to explore further, you can always visit our website. Aquacom has three pilot sites where aquathermal energy is being implemented, which are based in France, the Netherlands, and Belgium. Some of you might have attended the seminar on progress and status quo of our Belgian pilot site in June. If you didn't, you can find the recording online. Each of these pilots is driven by and for the community, demonstrating how local actors can play a key role in shaping their energy transition. And finally, Aquacom is also about building a knowledge community. The aquathermal energy knowledge community connects citizens, experts, and academics to explore aquathermal solutions. In this picture here, you can not only find the members of our partner institutions, but also representatives from the energy communities who came to the Netherlands last year to meet, exchange ideas, and learn together. Aquacom is assisting 16 of these energy communities across partner countries to implement AQE projects in their communities. In the project, we call them early adopters. They applied to the project to be part of the project in an earlier stage. And together, we aim to drive a green and inclusive energy transition. Of course, if you'd like to stay updated, you're welcome to sign up for our newsletter. Let me share a bit about our specific role in Aquacom. We are a research institution, namely the Institute for Transformation and Sustainable Futures, based at the University of Oldenburg in Germany. And within Aquacom, our main responsibility is to lead the data collection on governance, permits, and policies. This means we coordinate research across partner countries, gather insights, and bring together the pieces to form a clear picture of the policy and permitting landscape for aquathermal energy. So within the data collection, the key question we ask is, what does the data tell us about the current status quo of aquathermal energy readiness in different countries? In other words, how prepared are countries to adopt aquathermal energy technologies, and what are the barriers holding them back? And to answer this, we needed a structured data collection and evaluation process, which I'll explain in more detail. Here's how the process works. In each Aquacom partner country or region, one responsible person coordinates the data collection. Together, we cover Ireland, France, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. In case you have questions later on, there's at least one person from each partner country who participated in the data collection present today in the seminar. The data includes country-specific information on permits, policies, and the deployment of aquathermal technologies. We gather this information from a variety of sources, including desk-based research on published legislative texts, policy strategies, etc., as well as direct input from public authorities, research institutions, and stakeholder consultations. And importantly, this is not a one-time effort. The process is ongoing throughout the project lifetime. So with regular updates, we try to keep the data current. Generally, this kind of research depends very much on different factors like which stakeholders get back to us, regional differences, our project capacities, etc. So please don't consider it as 100% complete, and feel free to contact us if you feel like you have any additional information or updates. The data collection covers several categories. Regarding policies, we look at directives and regulations, which include related topics like renewable energy, heating laws, or climate goals, because regulations specifically addressing AQE are very rare. In this frame, we also look at contradictions and gaps that represent barriers to AQE adoption. We also explore stakeholder involvement, so who's responsible, what categories do they belong to, how engaged are they, and in which ways. In the next block, we look at permit requirements, which authorities are responsible, which criteria do energy communities have to consider when applying for a permit, and of course, time and cost estimations that need to be taken into account. We also identify barriers, which can be of different forms. For example, a lack of financial support structures like subsidies or incentives, or infrastructural challenges like local heating grids. And finally, we try to estimate future projections to derive recommendations for politicians, decision makers, and NGOs, etc. From the data of these different categories, we created a SWOT profile for each country, identifying strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which is really just a tool that helps us organize the findings into a clear picture. On the strength side, across countries, we can see supportive policies, existing projects, and engaged stakeholders. All of these categories differ a lot from country to country. On the weakness side, we find, for example, policy contradictions, high upfront costs, or unclear permit procedures. Opportunities include stronger integration of aquathermal energy into renewable energy strategies and the potential to expand through district heating. And finally, there are threats such as unclear regulations, slow permitting, and public skepticism. In the following slides, we'll dive deeper into these categories with a few examples from partner countries. This will only be a peek into the data outcomes, but if you want to know more about specific findings, you can find all the details online in our AQE tracker, which Katharina is going to introduce later. Let's start with the strength we identified. One very positive example for clear and supportive policies is the Missie Wetterwarmte program in the Netherlands, which provides project development support for AQE projects. Although it applies only on a very regional level, it may function as an example for broader application. In Flanders, the provincial spatial structure plan, which is still under development, will include specific targets for aquathermal energy development. So it actively addresses AQE. Financial support structures which stand out include the call for green heat investment support program in Belgium. And in France, the Fonds Chaleur provides grants for renewable heat projects, although it is not AQE specific, but it applies to renewable energies in general. Another strength is the presence of existing projects and systems. In Germany, for example, several large heat pumps projects are already in place or under development, serving as important references. While policies and permits for these projects differ a lot from small-scale AQE projects for energy communities, these projects might decrease public skepticism towards the technology, at least. The same is the case in the Netherlands, because there's just a vast number of aquathermal energy projects that are already established. And finally, stakeholder engagement is a strong driver. For example, in Ireland, or can be a strong driver, and we've seen a very good example of that in Ireland, where local communities show a very strong support for energy and sustainability projects. We had a partner meeting in Ireland earlier this year, and we were, I think, all very impressed by the community engagement of the early adopter communities that we visited. We have to add, though, that they need this kind of engagement to make these projects work because of otherwise rather missing governance structures. Yeah, in Belgium, integrated water policy involves multiple organizations such as the Environmental Agency and provincial authorities fostering collaboration. And generally, we think these examples show that a solid foundation already exists in several regions, which might be applied on broader levels. But of course, we also came across various weaknesses. One key issue is generally policy contradictions and gaps. For instance, discharge and extractions of surface water as well as water body temperature impacts are not always clearly defined, especially the missing regulations on discharge temperature leads to case-by-case assessments. In some regions like Flanders in Belgium, the delta T, so the difference between the difference in temperature between the water body and the discharged water is defined and regulated, but there's regulation missing on cumulative effects. So simply said, if my neighbor discharges cool water, how far down the river can I position the next AQE installations? Generally, the discharge temperature for water that is warmer than the water body is defined very clearly, since this has been done a lot in history. For example, because water was used for cooling down power plants. Yeah, I guess it says a lot about how we generated energy or heat in the past. Introducing a clear regulation on this into the other direction would really facilitate permit procedures, since case-by-case assessments just take up a long time. Another weakness in policies is that most of them relate very broadly to renewable energy or heating and cooling, but not specifically to aquathermal energy. Another barrier to AQE implementation is financial and political hesitation. High upfront infrastructure costs, although really only in comparison to less efficient air source heat pumps or fossil solutions. Well, and an unfavorable gas to electricity price ratio create hesitation. We have also seen that risks are rather overestimated because of lacking knowledge of the technology. I remember one example from our data collection in which stakeholders told me that decision makers thought that refrigerants would generally be released into the water, which is not the case. But if you think that, then of course you wouldn't want to pose that threat to any ecosystem. On the permitting side, weaknesses include a lack of standard procedures, like I mentioned before, which lead to uncertainty regarding time and cost estimations. And additionally, in some region, it is unclear which authority is responsible for specific permits. Of course, that just adds delays and risks. On the opportunity side, there's a lot of potential. Well, in Belgium, for example, there's a study that maps aquathermal potential across Flanders, which will be integrated into heat zoning plans. In Germany, the Heat Planning Act sets specific targets for district heating networks, requiring each state to draw up heat plans, although it does not address AQE specifically, but it sets incentives for the local governments to identify local potential for renewable energy sources, which of course includes water bodies. The growing attention to AQE within renewable energy regulations is also a promising factor, especially by highlighting the role of aquathermal solutions for small scale and local district heating. In order for this development to grow successfully, of course, there needs to be effective communication across stakeholder groups. And finally, if the regulatory structure adapts, aquathermal energy can significantly contribute to European sustainability goals, like reducing CO2 emissions and improving climate resilience. In other words, the potential for expansion is there, especially in collective systems, provided that financial support, regulations, and awareness continue to grow. And lastly, there are threats to the future development of AQE, which include slow or unclear legislations. So if standards and guidelines for using surface water are not clarified quickly enough, the development of AQE will be delayed, which would be unfavorable, considering that we are a bit on the clock to tackle the climate crisis. Political developments pose a threat, especially with current situations, limiting political support or sudden policy changes, which could undermine progress. The lack of environmental standards is holding AQE back a little. For example, more research is still needed on potential impacts such as filtration requirements. Additionally, long validation periods, unclear requirements, and inconsistent information between authorities, especially, all create significant risks that lead to hesitation by energy communities. And generally, public perception is a challenge since more awareness is needed. Otherwise, skepticism could slow down the adoption of AQE. Taken together, these threats remind us that although aquathermal energy holds great potential, its success depends on clear policies, efficient permitting, public support, and political conditions as well. And with that, I'm handing over to Katharina, who will put a more positive spin on this, I think.
Yes, because now we have like all this data and what are we going to do with it and how are we going to develop something in the future? And for that, we did the AKE tracker. And what is it? The AKE tracker is a comprehensive overview of the national efforts to create supportive conditions for the deployment of aquathermal energy, meaning that we created a modified traffic light grading system to provide a clear summary of every country's level of advancement. For that, we have these four different colors, green, yellow, orange, and red. You can see it at the map of our countries, how we rated them. It's performance from strong to critical. Of course, green is best and red is the lowest. And if you want to have a look at the AKE tracker, you can scan the QR code here or later also just click on the link here. And then you get at our website of Aquacom, and you can just see a short introduction. You see the map with our countries, and then you can scroll and find all of our countries or region when it comes to Belgium. First, you see like an overall qualitative assessment of the national approach to AQE. And then you will find the evaluation of our key categories, which I will explain in a second to you. You can just click yourself through it. Sometimes you also have some links to where you get further information about something. And yes, so now we will explain what's all about these categories. We have on the right side all the categories which we created for the SWOT analysis. So, but we wanted to like give it more, put them together and to try to encompass the full range of all the indicators that influence AQE projects. So we combined the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats together that are associated with the implementation. And for that, we have the 6 categories. The first one is policy and regulatory framework, meaning that everything that comes to policies, clarity and support, but also, we already said, contradiction and gaps that hinder AQE implementation. The second one is everything that comes with financial support and investment readiness. So how is the availability of grants and subsidies in the country, but also what are the financial barriers? Then we have everything that comes to the permitting process, the category permitting and procedural challenges. So it includes the costs, the time, delays of obtaining permits, and also the obstacles that comes from missing procedural clarity. The category for public and stakeholder engagement includes everything of the role of stakeholders and also the risks that we said, like public perception resistance. We know that is a problem. Future growth and sustainability has all the future outlook, the projections, expansion potential, and also the sustainable benefits out of it. And the last one is kind of looking at the status quo. We have current AQE deployment and infrastructure. So what is the number and types of existing AQE projects, and what does the infrastructure looks like, which impacts further development. So all of these 6 categories we evaluated and gave them a rating from -5 to 5, indicating that it has a positive or negative influences, if it's opportunities or barriers. And then we took the mean of all these individual scores across all indicators, and that will give us the final rating and the color you have seen in the previous slide to mark the country's process. This is just a short introduction how we did all this rating. On the website of the AQE tracker at the bottom, you find a methodology page where there's everything explained into detail if you want to have more information about that. Next, we thought also that not all of these categories have the same weight. So we wanted to reflect the relative importance of each categories, because we thought like policies or financial support structure have a bigger impact when you want to pursue a QE project than, for example, how many existing projects are there currently in your country. So we discussed this in a consortium, and where we made this corresponding weighting system, some of them counting double or half or single. And yes, so in the end, you can also find this whole justification of this indicator's significance also on the methodology page, and can see how we explained our rating system. And like we already said, it's a working process. We are currently trying to update the data again, so have new information about it, and we hope it's ready in spring 2026. So now we already said that we also want to look at Switzerland, because we found very interesting examples there, and we want to learn maybe from it, because we want to improve everything in the future. So let's have a short look at Switzerland, because it's an example of a long history of AQE in practice, and they have a relatively mature framework of rules and funding mechanisms. Today, there are roughly about 500 AQE projects, stretching back many decades. You can see at the map the projects and operations. Blue is for cooling, red is for heating, and orange ones are mixed projects. So it's quite a lot. And they're also very organized, kind of, because like the Primero Energy is a Swiss cooperative and energy supplier, running over 250 heating systems, many of them also with renewable energies, just to see how they are also organized there. And now we want to give you some specific examples what they did. First, for permits and regulations, looking that they have guidelines and support structure on a cantonal level for AQE permission processes, meaning that they have one lead department for the coordination of consenting and licensing. Depending on the project's side, there are like 2 different lead departments if it's a bigger or a smaller project, which of course helps avoiding the fragmentation of all these different departments, institutions, which slow down projects. And of course, on the other side, clarity is very important. They have the Water Protection Ordinance, which provides explicit thresholds for allowable temperature with delta T. We already talked about it. In Switzerland, it's 3 degrees Celsius. There are countries of us who already have it, but some still don't, and Switzerland already has it since 1999. In the end, of course, this results in a relatively fast and well-defined permitting processes with typical time ranges of 3 to 5 months, which of course is very important for the predictability of AQE projects. The next example is on financial structures. They have cantonal financial support structures with grants and subsidies also for the capital-intensive parts of AQE systems, um, like incentives that favor connection to renewable district heating networks, or even support larger heat pumps greater than 70 kilowatt, explicitly also naming AQE as an energy source. And on the other side, they have market incentives, which is the Click Foundation, which I think is very interesting. They are a Swiss organization set up by the petroleum industry to comply with the CO2 Act of Switzerland, and they are financing projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Switzerland and abroad. So they expect to achieve emission reduction about 20 million tons of CO2 in Switzerland during this decade. And they're spread across four main sectors: transport, companies, building, and agriculture. And it fulfills the legal obligation on behalf of around 40 mineral companies. And this is very interesting because the Click Foundation holds polluters accountable. And I think it's an important thing because of the problem that a lot of our countries have with the gas and with electricity ratio, which can have an impact on that. And in the end, of course, this results in the reduction of financial barriers, the mixture of this market incentives, grants, and cantonal level support lowers the upfront costs and improves the business case for AQE. The last example is about the stakeholder engagement. Switzerland places emphasis on transparent public information and local advisory services. For example, we have this public research project called EAVAC from the Federal Office for Environment. They supply open data on aquathermal energy use and their potential. The map you have seen earlier about Switzerland is also from this research project. It ended in 2019, but I think it's still a very important source. And on the other side, they have consulting services, again on a cantonal level, which are offering practical guidance on planning, legal requirements, and expected processing times. And they are also running campaigns to inform the public. There's an institution called Energie Schweiz, which tries to inform and give easy access to public information, which we all know is important to reduce skepticism and have a higher public trust, which I think a lot of our countries are lacking. So that are just like a few examples how Switzerland is doing it. It's not that everything's perfect there, but I think they have a long history, which gave them some support that I did a lot of good examples. And now we ask ourselves, like, what are we going to do with all of that, and how are we involved as in the future? And for that, we are planning to develop advocacy actions based on the SWOT analysis and the best practice examples we just saw on a national and an EU level context. We want to do a policy brief for that. And now there's like the question, how would you like to be involved with this? First, we already said, we're always welcome if you give us recommendations, ideas, or even if you have new information which we have not covered yet. We are happy if you get in contact with us. You see our emails there. And we have also a short survey which we would like you to do, where you can give us more ideas, or you can also you are asked if you want to get in contact with this network here. And we will also have a short discussion about how we can get involved and what can we learn from each other. But you will have some short time to take part in the survey. And after 5 minutes break, we want to discuss a little bit more. So we are happy if you have time and want to get into a discussion with us. Then you can also ask us questions if you have any. And yes, first, we want to thank you, of course, that you listened to us, and we hope to see you in 5 minutes.
All right, I think we're good to go. Welcome back. As promised, we now have time for questions and discussion. Of course, you're welcome to switch on your camera so that we can see your faces. Hi, Anja. And yeah, you're free to ask or comment anything you like. Remember, there are team members from our partner institutions of all partner countries available too. So you're not only left with Katharina and me. Of course, you also, we would be interested in hearing about any aquathermal energy challenges you are currently facing in your country or in your community, or whether you heard anything today that you think would be especially relevant or helpful to adapt in your country or region. So yeah, we're opening the floor.
Maybe before we're gonna go to some questions, maybe a quick thing that I wanted to add from the consortium. So I'm Sebastian, working for Extract, and we're one of the Flemish partners in the project. And so, of course, we also guided the University of Oldenburg with what's going on in Flanders on this level. And I also noticed that Thijs van der Meren is also joining the webinar. But he's actually someone from the Flemish Waterway who's working hard on implementing good structures for permits and policies. And so this is something maybe that's interesting to note quickly for Flanders as a takeaway for everyone else. So as you noticed, indeed, in Switzerland, they worked on good regulation. That's quite clear. In Flanders, this was lacking, and this is one of the assignments that has and actually a bigger group in Flanders, including the waterways and the provinces and other parties from the government have to actually also make it very clear here in Flanders. And maybe one of the big takeaways that I can already say is that it's very important in our ongoing work where we support them to also look at the cumulative effects of ecothermal energy, because a lot of regulation also actually in Switzerland is more in place for just individual systems. So it can be, for example, in Switzerland, quite straightforward to get a permit for one installation and go through that process easily. But if you want to, actually map or look at the potential for a bigger scale, what do you do with a lot of installations that might have interest on the same water body? This is also, for example, something in the Netherlands that is coming up quite a lot actually in discussions on the new permits that are going to be in place. And so also in Flanders, this is a problem that's now being tackled by getting really legislation or structures in place for also looking at these cumulative effects of ecothermal energy. Because of course, like I said, it's important to also know, what can I do if my neighbor is also working on an ecothermal project? How will we influence each other? Because you're all connected to the same river, to the same water bodies. So that needs to be also taken into account. So maybe in the future, when there's more specific documentation on this framework actually in Flanders, then we can definitely share it to all of you as well. But already something to take into account that this is being worked on in Flanders.
I think Peter put his hand up first. If you want to go.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Peter, working as a scientist at the Research Institute for Nature and Forest in Flanders. So I'm also involved in some work on aquathermy. So many thanks for the initiative, also for the nice overview, which was very inspiring and also enlightening for me. But as an ecologist, we are still struggling on the ecological impact. So you mentioned that the stakeholder perception is a little bit overrated. So I'm not sure. But given that you're on top of it, so you work with several countries, several partners. So my question then would be, what about the temperature? How has this been assessed in other regions? So you mentioned that in Switzerland there's this 3 degrees Celsius difference that can be released, and then for trout it's 1.5 for obvious reasons. But is there any general assessment tool or any overarching framework to assess the potential ecological impact?
For Switzerland, they in this research project, yeah, like they had several papers which you also can find on the website there, where they assess this and where they found like, okay, 3 degrees Celsius is just still fine, where they analyzed what's happening with the ecosystem also in different lakes, also for a very long time now, because they have like established projects very early, and also they analyze it from other power plants, and we're looking what's happening there. So there are some interesting paper where you can find. There are also English ones. Not all is in English, actually.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I will check it. I have to check it. Okay, thanks.
Colette, you can go.
Hello, I'm Colette from EcoPower. I'm also one of the partner countries in Aquacom. We are one of the pilot sites, so we are building a pilot in the mill site of Rotselaar. It's a small village in Flanders. We will actually be starting building in 2 weeks, so it's quite exciting. And I just wanted to add that besides legislation and regulation, it's in Flanders, it was already mentioned, but we are struggling in Belgium with a very, very, very bad ratio between electricity and gas. With the mill sites, it's very important to understand that the 10 households on the mill site, they have a very sustainable mindset. It's quite an extraordinary group of people that live there. I mean, it's not the average person from Flanders. It's really the small group of very sustainable mindset people. And even then, we had to build up a business case, and we couldn't. It's not possible to go below gas prices. It's just impossible, even with the Northwest Europe Interreg subsidy. So it's important to understand that in Belgium we have a very, very big challenge with that. And as time goes by, I try to use every opportunity to really mention this. If aquathermal energy or any kind of type of heat pump technology, if we want to make it work in Flanders, in Belgium, then there has to be something that changes the ratio between gas and electricity. And most likely that will be a tax shift, but it's super bad in Belgium. It's one of the baddest, the worst countries in Europe for that. Like the United Kingdom is quite bad, but all the other countries are much better. So that is a challenge for Belgium. It's very important. And if anybody that has some kind of influence on it is here in the webinar, I really like to mention, if we want to make it work in Belgium, heat pump technology, then a tax shift, and a big tax shift is really, really needed. That was all.
Yeah, thank you, Colette. We have one question in the chat. You've got the number of ECI initiatives in Switzerland. Did you manage to get similar data from the Northwest Europe countries, from the other Northwest Europe countries? And do they confirm your ranking on favorable countries? It was actually really hard to get data on how many systems are already in place. And you won't find many of them on the internet. So Switzerland is really doing a good job publishing all that data and making it available. In Germany, for example, we talked to energy and environmental agencies who had some information about potential AQE sites that are under development, but they weren't sure about the exact number. So it was really more estimations than clear facts. I don't know about Germany. Maybe Jessica can talk a bit more about that. And for the other countries, yeah, we have other people here in the round too.
Yeah, I can definitely confirm that it's not easy to get the number in Germany. So we started a research project to kind of count them, or also get some data characteristics from the systems. So there are some old research projects who say which say that there can be around maybe 100 systems in Germany, but it's very like they are very anonymous in these projects, or in this one dissertation some years ago. And we now try to find out some more specifications and some more information about these AQE plans or systems. We're still in the process, so I don't have like exact data for this at this point. It's just collecting the data, but at least from like all the we asked all the authorities in Germany, and they like still answered that it's about 100 systems. Kind of now we want to contact all of these and still try to find some others in the internet and so on. But yeah, it's not that much data on the official site, and we still are in the process of finding out more information. So yeah, I can like the most important thing is that I really can confirm that information here in Germany is still very difficult.
Thank you very much for sharing that. By the way, Jessica works for the Technical University of Darmstadt. I hope it was okay that I put you on the spot here. I just knew that.
Yeah, of course. With spontaneous. I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't introduce myself. Yeah, Jessica Gapisch. You can see the name. I'm working at the Technical University of Darmstadt, and we started a research project like at the end of last year to exactly find out like the German state of the art about AQE actually.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Sebastian.
Yeah, maybe just adding for Flanders, so it will be the goal to have a map actually showing the potential for Flanders next year being published, where also the current installations will be displayed and also future installations that will come. And at this moment, actually, it is assessed like or roughly assess how much projects there are, and it's about 15-20 projects that are currently installed in Flanders and 50 under investigation. So it's not, of course, indeed a big number yet, but the hope is that it's continuing to go forward. And actually, speaking of Belgium, because I'm also always speaking about Flanders, you have the difficulty of the different regions, of course. But we can say that Flanders is really taking the lead there, and in Brussels and Wallonia, it's quite on a low level actually that they're looking at it.
Yes, please continue. Well, yeah, sorry. Do you want to say anything, or?
Are you talking to me? I'm not sure.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm Jeroen and
Go
I'm a
ahead.
colleague. And I'm working also at the Research Institute for Nature and Forest in Brussels. So we look and we put an eye on the ecological consequences of these techniques. So I think it's very interesting and good that we look at alternative technologies. But of course, you say it's sustainable, and in order to be right that it's sustainable, we need to have a good idea about ecological consequences, because these techniques can have a potential impact as well on the ecology of the waters where you're planning to install these different techniques. And of course, there is also legislation. So we have big aims also for ecological improvements. There's now a new nature restoration law where we have certain goals about free flowing, the free flowing aspects of rivers, for sure, for instance. So I'm very happy with the survey you did in all these different countries. And I was wondering if you also had a look at the ecological consequences. Is there a lot of study going on in all the other neighboring countries about this aspect? You mentioned already filtration, so this is indeed an issue. It's already a long issue also for a cooling water industry. Eh? So there's a lot of techniques already in place, I think. But did you look at these kind of aspects as well? It's just an open question because we are very, interesting to see some wrap up of that kind of issues, because we really want to have this to use this information as well to help the government with their legislation process, to take this also into account.
Yeah, sure. Well, this particular survey was more on the governance framework, so really just policies, permits, stakeholders, and of course we looked at what people thought about the technology, and yeah, we came across a few risks and fears, and yeah, but this particular survey did not really focus on ecological factors. I mean, Extract is more the partner on the engineering perspective and which materials are used, which filtration systems, etc. So I don't know if Sebastian wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, of course, Jeroen and I have been in contact for the studies that are going in Flanders. But indeed, yeah, when it's of course indeed an important thing to start measuring the impact on different systems with their different components, configurations, to know like what is good practice. And indeed, I think in a lot of countries, almost all of them, this is really lacking. In the Netherlands, we see that there are of course incentives to start with these kind of things, to have some measurements. But it's also very difficult to clearly measure the impact of these systems, because how do you do it in a way? Sometimes you can, for example, go for a lab environment where you measure things, but then how will this actually play out in the real situations in open water? And also measuring in open water, it's difficult to know what are the influences of the aquathermal systems and what are maybe influences from other things. So I think it's good that there's thought about it, that we try and measure things, but we also have to let's say not block a lot of things before we know everything, because it's gonna be very difficult to know everything. And only if we start then I think it's gonna be also very sad that this technology was not actually looked at, and that it didn't actually help to contribute to limit CO2 emissions from fossil fuel heating systems. While I do completely agree, Jeroen, that if we look at legislation now, it has to make sense that we're not, for example, what I also learned in Flanders, what they decided now is we're not going to use these systems for cooling, because then we're heating up the water, because in general that will create more impact than cooling down water. I mean, these general things, of course, they make sense. Maybe sometimes there should be an open eye to also maybe allow it for a little bit of cooling applications, but still it makes sense to look in those directions, but then also start to promote it more, because otherwise I think we'll also lack the good or favorable things about the technology. Because, for example, if we now say everyone should go for air source heat pumps instead of aquathermal, yeah, then also the problem is these technologies are way less efficient. So you use more electricity. If it's still grid electricity, then it's more gray electricity. So they produce also more CO2 actually than an aquathermal system, because it's more efficient. So that's also things that, of course, we need to take into account and find a good balance. That's my opinion on this.
Can I comment on this?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I agree, Sebastian, but everything is context, of course. You mentioned, or the people mentioned, the long history of applying these techniques in Switzerland, and of course that's quite understandable because Switzerland has a lot of water, but the systems are completely different. But with the systems that we have in Flanders, of course, they have this big pre-alpine lakes where I guess the impact on temperature and on the ecology will be much more smaller than when we try to apply these techniques in our systems. And you must be aware that there is a lot of pressure already on our systems, and this is just an extra thing that you add. So we have to be careful, and that's my only thing I think that I want to stress out. In Flanders, there's a lot of pressure on nature in general, also on our water systems. And this just might add an extra pressure on it. So we have to be careful. And everything is context. In Switzerland, you can do, or in other countries, maybe in Germany also, you can do maybe easier things without too much risks on the ecology. But in Flanders, we have a different situation. So it's good that we take it into account. And I'm very happy that we discuss all these matters and it's taken into account. So that's very good. But still, it's difficult to, and I agree, Sebastian, it's not so easy to estimate good impacts or the impact in a good way on the system. That's not easy, and to distract this from all the other pressures. And I think also it's already good that we don't use it for cooling. Because there's already a lot of warming up of our waters, and especially in Flanders, this is a big pressure. So that's already a good thing. I wonder also if in other countries they also put this restriction that you don't use aquathermy for heating, for cooling. Sorry, for cooling. So I was wondering if this is the case in the other countries as well, or do they look at that as well?
It's a good point. I will just quickly give in Switzerland, they have, of course, a lot of cooling, but as you said, there's like a different geography. They have like these mountain lakes, which are like very cold water, so it doesn't matter so much if it's like a little bit warmer. That's why they already been using that a lot. But they have assessed this a lot, what it's going to make to the ecosystem. So that's what I was talking about, the studies they made. But of course, it's a different thing in Flanders because there's just different environments. But Colette, you can also step in there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that for the pilot sites in Belgium, we agreed with the authorities, the Flemish environmental company, that we are going to measure 2 times a month for certain periods the impact of in the water on the water temperature before the heat exchanger and after. It's with a closed system, so it's a heat exchanger in the water. So before and after the heat exchanger will be measuring it. It's not just before and just after. It's just yeah, it's a bit couple meters, but we already actually know that it's gonna be non-measurable. It's gonna be before and after the heat exchanger, it's gonna be the same temperature. So it's a bit, we understand that we have to do the measurements, and we need the data in Belgium to show, okay, this is in real life the impact, but the capacity of the heat exchanger that we put in the water and the capacity that we ask, well, that we take from the water, the heat that we take from the water is really, really limited. So we know that it's just it's not gonna give any workable data, but well, it's good. Well, if there is no difference, it's of course also workable data. But I think it's really important to understand that in many different countries there are already done a lot of studies about the impact on the water from aquathermal energy, and they all point out that it's very, very, very limited. But Jeroen, I do understand your comments about the Flemish waterways, that they are already on a big pressure on them. But it's really good to maybe look at those studies because they point out literally the same thing every time. But yeah, I wanted to add that that we also are going to measure it in for our pilot sites for a certain time.
Yeah, thanks. You can just go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. So one, I think we should consider the ecology. And two, I also fully agree, and I'm also aware that it's very difficult. But I think we should focus on time series data. I think that's the true strength. So in Switzerland, they have it. So they should, maybe they did it, or likely they did it. It's the EWAC. But time series, because indeed, if you just measure a few months before and a few months after, you will not measure anything. So this climate variation, etc. So I think time series, that's one of the things we should somehow include in policies, that the least minimum invested. And then I think we should critically also think about endpoints, what to measure. So it's not just temperature. And that's very difficult. But I would be extremely happy if we could, at least at a European scale, develop some guidelines or standardized approach to assess it, because we should actually quantify it. And if I agree, it can be context specific, but if we have many systems that have been applied, then we can at least find some trends in that using long-term data. So I think at this stage, now that all these installations are installed and implemented, I think this is now the moment to start monitoring. And maybe not that intensive, but at least a few endpoints could be measured, and it should be a trade-off between detail and having some data. And I think that's currently completely lacking. So everyone is applying it from the socio-economical aspects, but there's of course an ecological aspect, and we don't know, and that should not be a barrier. I fully agree with Bastian, but at least we should acknowledge that. And I think that should somehow be in the workflow, that there is, time or budget allocated for long-term monitoring. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I don't know if there are any other questions or marks. I think we are already over the time, but
There's one more question in the chat from Roland. You've mentioned stakeholders' engagement and how public bodies may facilitate AQE projects. Do you have good practices of public bodies making important information available? For example, awareness about AQE basics, how to set up a project technically and administratively, etc. I think Switzerland is setting a good example, and there's a few structural support structures like the Missiewetterwante in the Netherlands. There's other examples too, but I don't think any of the partner countries is making it really publicly available. We're trying to work on a knowledge platform to make our findings available after the project lifetime. So that hopefully will set some guidelines for partner countries.
and the AQE tracker maybe also provides some information. It's not like how are you going to do a project, but it's give you information basics on it, and you can like further look into detail after you have like an overview maybe. But I think it's still very difficult to get access to information.
All right, if there are no more comments, then I think we're going to finish with this. Feel free to contact us for any further comments or questions you have. Thank you for your attention today, for your interest in aquathermal energy, and for your commitment to advancing sustainable solutions in your communities. We look forward to exchanging knowledge and ideas with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.